Hello, it's a real joy to be back at LeWeb. The last time Loic asked me to share the stage with him was actually as the warm-up act to then presidential candidate Sarkozy. And now in a very different context. Since then, many things have changed. I spent 5 years as an entrepreneur, and now back, as Loic said, actually heading all of industrial design and user interface, user experience design at Nokia for the last year. And before we get started, I just wanted to say a few things in introduction on the topic of the state of the smartphone planet, and particularly the theme of LeWeb, which is platforms. So the two themes, one is dominant designs of operating systems, and the other has to do with collective intelligence and data. So the smartphone market at the moment, the way it looks to me, is so hot and so over-covered by the media that we're sometimes under the false impression that all of the innovation is done and that the dominant design for a smartphone operating system is already here. I think that's a mistake. I would argue rather that we're where the automotive industry was in the 1890s. I don't know if you remember, but cars looked like this in the 1890s. In fact, in the 1890s, cars had tillers, in French, une barre, like in a boat, right? Reverse tiller. It took the industry 15 years to settle on a steering wheel as the way to operate a car, as the dominant user interface for an automobile, and for the stick shift to be placed where it is, and so on. I think we're just at the beginning. We're in the middle of this phase, but there's a lot to learn from the competitive environment. And if you look at what's been introduced to the market, what are the patterns? There's at least two dominant design candidates in the market. The first one is this, elegant, simple, extremely well-known. This is the iOS pattern, essentially a screen or screens full of apps and a physical home key, like the mouse key. You click it, you take your hand off the screen to do something on the screen, namely to go home. Beautifully elegant, extremely simple to learn with a few steps. And think of a floor plan of a house where if you want to go from the kitchen to the dining room, you know how. You go through the front door. And if after dinner you want to go to the living room, you, again, know how to do that. You go through the front door. Of course, the physical button, this mouse click, is being loaded with more and more functionality, but essentially a beautifully elegant system that's fantastically constrained. Now, the second model, which is the fastest growing model, is actually the pattern that is shared by both Symbian and Android. And that's the model of multiple personalizable home screens. And here the bet is that the process of personalizing, filling out these home screens is so simple and organic that it just happens over time, and you end up using the device via these home screens. Notice that there's not only one physical button, there are many. In fact, there are many different configurations, and it's quite fragmented, as many people have commented. And there's some way to flip to an app grid from where you launch apps, but essentially, it's about these personalizable home screens with both shortcuts and live information or views into apps, also known as widgets. And this model is also interesting, but it couldn't be that it ends here. Now, if you look at the market right now, Windows Phone 7 has introduced an interesting new pattern, too early to tell, but it just shows that there is demand for other patterns. And this is basically what the design team in the Nokia Design Studio has spending most of its time on doing, is introducing a new pattern. This will be launched with MeeGo in 2011. I can't show you this pattern today, but what I will say, I'll talk a little bit further out than that. If you look at touchscreen immersive experiences, so most touchscreen devices, and once you start thinking this way, you will see this in every single moment. So you're walking in Paris and you see a cafe, and you'll see two people, maybe they've been a couple, they've been together for 10, 15 years. They'll be there head down, pinching and zooming, right? Touchscreen interfaces are immersive, they require our full attention. I think we're missing a trick, and also we're not doing good enough design unless we give people their head up again. What do I mean by that? Better one-handed use, better ways to use the devices without them commanding our full attention. This means more eye contact, more ability to be present both with the people you are around with right now in the physical environment, as well as when you're navigating the physical environment and using maps. I think this, giving people their head up again, is extremely important. Which is the bridge to my second topic, which is increasingly the competitiveness of platforms, whether they be for smartphones or tablets, will be determined not only by the patterns of user experience and how they're used, but also by how they make use of the collective intelligence of their users. And by which I mean is, how do the platforms get better the more people use them? Now, I'll take the example I know best, which is Maps, Ovi Maps. We have, on a daily basis, the total navigation on Ovi Maps is 80 times circumventing the world in a given day. Users use it 11 times a month. And notice, these are not maps. These are navigation patterns drawing maps. So this is actual navigation data that allows us to draw maps. What does this collective intelligence then do? The easiest example is avoiding traffic jams, proposing interesting alternate routes based on real-time navigational data. But it's not only the case that data of navigation makes the navigation better for me or for the collective in aggregate. It's also the case that actually data about navigation can improve maps. As many of you know, keeping maps up to date is a real challenge. And you see here, there's a little bit of off-piste action happening here in that car. That gives us an indication that perhaps the map is not correct. And by using this kind of data, we actually improve the quality of the map. So there is a kind of feedback loop on the quality of data here again. You see, which allows us to hypothesize that. But it's really not only about location and maps. Increasingly, as we have more and more sensors in these devices, this could be the LeWeb party tonight. With appropriate use of the data, we can guess where the discotheque is, where the line outside of the club is, and where the bar is. Increasingly using this data, but in a modern way. Now, if you look at the literature on collective intelligence, as long as you have a diverse enough group of people working independently on a problem, and that population is large enough, almost all questions are solvable this way. And the combination of sensors makes it a very exciting opportunity. How then is the Ovi ecosystem growing? Just a few stats. 250,000 new signups a day, 3.5 million app downloads a day. That was 3 million 3 weeks ago, and in September it was 2 million. And on a monthly basis, the navigators around the world are totaling 100 million kilometers. And with that note, I'd like to go over to Loic.
Please.
And take some questions. 1890, 2011. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you very much, Marko. Please have a seat. Yeah, here's another mic for you. So, Marko, how do you see so when do you launch this new pattern that you've been?
The new UI will be part of Migo, which is our Linux-based broad ecosystem, in 2011. That's all we've said so far.
But like early 2011?
2011.
Okay. How do you, how is it with the competition? You've been saying, and actually I would like to thank you for being very straightforward here when you said the media attention is a lot on competition. But so how do you describe that? Do you think Nokia is maintaining its market share? You think it's growing, it's improving it, or do you think, is it like, you've changed CEO, right?
That's right.
So is there kind of a panic there, or everything's cool and we're growing?
First of all, I think fundamentally you phrased the question right, in the sense that there is a critical mind share and media attention question, which is separate in a way from the global reach of Nokia handsets. We have 1.3 billion people using the handsets every day. That's a lot of muscle memory.
So you have 1.3 billion with a phone like that?
No, also different kinds of phone. Meaningful choice.
You said billion, right?
1.3 billion people. Now, that story doesn't get written up as much, that this sort of giving access to communication and so on. But essentially, I think I would agree with you, unless we'd introduce another pattern, a new smartphone operating system design, we wouldn't cut through. Because no matter how much we polish and get more and more apps, you need to somehow regain the imagination, and that's, I think, important.
So reinvent it, as you were saying.
Yeah, and I honestly believe, I mean, I'm back at Nokia for a year, it would be remarkable if the innovation was only here. If you look at the things that a mature, competitive smartphone or tablet operating system has to do, launch apps, switch between apps critically, go back to things you've recently done, and get informed of things, namely, get informed of missed texts, missed messages, but also from updates from social networks. There are other ways to solve it than these. And particularly, I think, this issue of how many physical keys. So we're really emphasizing devices where the face of the device is nearly all screen.
I see. And are we touching it still?
Absolutely. I think what I said about the mouse click, that was deliberate. That's still not direct. You're not on the screen. You have to take your hand off onto the mouse, click it, and so on. Just like we have in the Symbian pattern and in the iOS pattern.
Right, this one doesn't have a mouse, right?
No, it has one click. It has one button.
So you're going to remove that?
Devices that are increasingly just screen, because that gives more screen-to-product face ratio. That means for a smaller device, we can have more space for apps to shine.
Small device. Are we going to get rid of this whatsoever? Like I'm going to just project it on my glasses or something? Or in my retina? How cool would that be?
I think that's a ways away yet. Ways away yet.
But you think it's going to happen? Because this should be smaller and get smaller and smaller and smaller. So, like, tell me, can you forget about Nokia just for a second?
Of course.
Give me, like, your view, like, 10 years, 20 years. What, you know, this is not, by the way, this is not a phone anymore, right? We don't use voice. I don't use voice. If you try to call me, you can't, it's just email or IM or Twitter and so on. Mm-hmm. So what do you see are the trends?
I think what I talked about just recently about this giving people ways to interact with devices that don't require their full attention. Now, you may sound that sounds abstract, but it means that I can have more interaction with the people directly here. I think that's a mega trend. It's a soft trend. It's not something that would be spoken about because it means not paying attention to that device all the time. This means better ways of pulling information without interrupting what you're doing. I don't need to, sorry, I got to go tweet this, you know. You don't have to interrupt.
So I just think and it tweets? Is that what you...
Not quite, but we can get better. We can certainly design those peripheral interactions and getting notified. Do you know if something new requires your attention without paying full attention?
Tell me about developers. We have plenty in the room and many watching as well. So the main reason why I should code an app for Nokia is the 1.3 billion devices? No,
I think one is we've reset a lot of the developer toolkit towards the outside, so focusing all on Qt.
So not Symbian.
And Qt, that's on top of Symbian, but it's a development environment. Okay. That's common to both Symbian and MeeGo. So Qt and Qt Quick, and also HTML5 going forward. So that's one thing, is making it more accessible. Clearly, it's been challenging to develop for Symbian sometimes. The other is scale, but the most important thing is local reach. So even as we're talking about developer communities, still the one unseen thing is it's the most global developer community with local participation. We localize our devices, and if you just take even services, maps, we're live in over 80 countries, over 46 languages, right? If we can give more of that to developers and give reach globally, that's interesting.
All right, I see.
In locally relevant in your language, and local apps that are relevant to you.
So what you would recommend is we go HTML5 to code for Nokia phone?
If you want performance, I'd look at Qt and Qt Quick. Which
and
is
you have a workshop, right, this afternoon?
That's right.
And a booth as well, that we can check it as well. Well, yeah, I think the perception and the market share is very different, especially in Europe, right? You're still like very, very dominant in Europe. Are we going to get an Android Nokia?
We're interested in using platforms where we can create and add value. And if that were the case on Android, then, but it isn't the case right now.
Oh, wait. I'm trying to decode what you said. You said we're trying to create value, an environment where you...
We're interested in businesses where you can create value, right?
So you're saying Android doesn't create value?
From the point of view of the device manufacturer. So if you're looking at this case, first of all, I think it's much more interesting to introduce a new pattern. Much more interesting competitively. No doubt. And I think the consumers deserve choice. They deserve a European-based global ecosystem.
Yeah.
Okay. And
I like Europe.
You know that as
I like
an
Europe.
entrepreneur that is here. And I think we have a responsibility as the leading mobile company in Europe to work on that. Okay? So that's one thing. The other thing is, actually, as a pattern, the pattern is the same pattern. Many people don't know this, but the Symbian Android pattern is the same. The business model is different. Who makes money and how? That's not fundamentally a design question, but how people make money in Symbian and how people make money in Android is different. And who makes money.
You would say Windows Phone 7 is also the same pattern?
No, it's not. Who here has used Windows Phone 7 so far?
I have.
On a daily basis, yeah. So it's definitely not the same pattern. It's a new pattern. They solve in a very interesting way that. It's too early to tell, but it shows that there's hunger for innovation. Because the other thing, you're talking about mind share, something does happen when a platform becomes common and everyone has it, at least everyone that you see. It becomes a little bit less exciting.
I've never seen you that excited, and I know I've known you for 10 years, like personally. This is not business related. And also, you sold your company. You created a company, a startup yourself, right? Yep. You said, I'm going to leave, start your business, raise money from all the best investors worldwide, our friend Joey and others. Yes. And you come back home, so that must be really exciting.
Yeah, and I think there's an opportunity to do something interesting. And if you can be part of making a bet on the steering wheel.
Is that going to be better than the iPhone?
I really believe in shipping. And one key thing is you asked when. It's only going to ship when it's right and when it's amazing. And that'll be next year.
So when you ship, it's going to be better than the iPhone?
I don't know what all competition. I look at competition very broadly. And by the way, globally, our competition isn't only iPhone land, and there's a little bit of Cupertino distortion field sometimes happening that we think that's only where, I think if you really look at the market and look at accessibility of patterns, the previous discussion was also about that, how sort of how low you can go.
Yeah, and Rovio has been extremely successful on Nokia, right? Huge.
Yep, huge. And as I shared a few of the numbers, the Alvi store is ramping. You know, it's going to be, and this local relevance is very interesting. I think the situation with a new pattern like Windows Phone 7, it's a little bit too early to tell. Also, for those of you that follow these things, it's interesting to look at the business model, like who's making money again, where. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Marko. And I really, wish you break a leg for the. It's very exciting stuff. I can't wait to see the new pattern. Again, never saw you that excited.
Yeah.
So
looking forward to be back.
Thank you so much, Marko. Yeah, we'll have you back. You want to launch here next year? Maybe not. Thank you, Marko. Good luck.